The National Assembly proposed that the counties be allocated 316 billion shillings in shareable revenue, but the Senate roots for 327 billion shillings. Clearly, the difference is not enormous. It's about 11 billion shillings, which logically can be discussed and leveled out, and this will spare the counties and the economy the pain and disruption likely to be occasioned by the stalemate. Not that this is the first time. It has been recurring every year, which demonstrates sheer lack of commitment to devolution. Yet, all agree that the county system is the most viable model for equitable development of this country. Having seen the drawbacks that attend to the centralized government and the resultant animosities it generates across the regions and communities, while the Supreme Court will have to pronounce itself on this matter, it is incumbent on President Uhuru Kenyatta to unblock the standoff through convening the summit, which, by the way, brings together the governors and the central government to agree on the allocation to the counties. It's not in the interest of anyone to stall county operations. The National Assembly and the Senate must stop these obstructionist tendencies that undermine devolution. And tonight, we borrow the words of James Bovard, an American libertarian, an author and a lecturer. People are so docile right now. It's almost as if good government means when the politicians lie to us for our own good, for the public good, and bad government is when politicians lie for their own selfish interests. My guests tonight, Daisy Amdany, Steve Ogola, and David Ochieng. My name is Ken Mijungu. Welcome to our program tonight. Join the conversation. As always, the hashtag is Sidebar. At NTV Kenya, at Ken Mijungu. Sidebar begins right now.
Hatutakubali tena bunge ikuwe ni bunge ya wanaume. Mimi kama mama mwakilishi ya wanawake, sina shida kama kero iliyoko ni kiti cha women rep. Sawa, mnaweza ondoa hilo jina, mradi tu mtuwekee nafasi ya mwanamke kwa bunge.
I want to tell Moses Kuriam, a honorable member of parliament, my fellow member of parliament, that please, as you make those amendments of yours, we are not taking it for granted as women of this country. We want to warn you, and women rep seat will never be scrapped.
Right, a good place to begin our conversation tonight. And I'll begin it with Daisy. Daisy, this is just a proposal, but it's already creating so much heat and energy out there. The fact that they think that putting, there was no sunset clause and they need to disband this position of women rep. One, we know the Constitution expressly creates this position. Is it an affront to the Constitution, or you think it's time that we rethought this position of women representatives?
First of all, the Constitution provides that you shall have no more than 2/3 of the same gender in any elective or appointive office. And since the promulgation of the Constitution, this is the one clause that Parliament has failed completely to provide for. Okay. What has the 47 seats done? The 47 seats, they are provided in Parliament, and they have given an opportunity for women to be elected even in areas where a woman would never have been elected, okay?
Yes.
It is an affirmative action seat, and affirmative action generally has a sunset clause, but you put in sunset clauses once you have put in the necessary legislation and you have worked towards resocializing people. So when you have done nothing, in fact, the first government, this administration that was the first elected under the new Constitution, as early as 2014, started the debate on removing the 2/3 gender principle. So there has been a consistent propaganda about what they call overrepresentation, exacerbated by unnecessary seats, unnecessary representation. The truth of the matter is, since independence, we've had very low representation of women, and had it not been for the 47 seats, we would never have such a high number of women in Kenya, the Kenyan legislature. Okay. So if Parliament are proposing to remove it, and it is just a proposal, what do they plan to replace it with?
Okay.
They have not implemented the 2/3 gender principle. The political parties are refusing. The cabinet is not compliant. Even in appointive offices where you don't need any legislation, there is a deliberate there's a deliberate effort to exclude women. So when you look at cabinet, when you look at public service, when you look at ambassador appointments, when you look at whatever the head of state is doing, his nominations and his appointments doesn't meet. It's non-compliant. So this is just. And I don't think that we should take it lightly, because when you have the leadership of the country demonstrated by the head of state, reiterated by the legislature, continually making the status of women seem as, you know, of none effect in this country, then I think we have many questions that we need to ask, because women are part and parcel of this society, and we have a right to representation.
Let me take you back before I speak to David and Steve. For example, in the space of elective politics, there are so many arguments, but one of the arguments that sticks out is, why don't they be allowed to fight it like other men and get it?
The 47 women actually are elected, and they are elected by universal suffrage. These are not nominated seats. They are elected by both men and women.
I mean, just open it. We don't have specific seats. So we are opening it, then the women fight for it.
That's a discussion that we must have, because political parties must begin to adopt this. Because remember that our elective politics is skewed against women, and women have been marginalized for a long time. So even in terms of integrating them into the political networks, in terms of how campaigns are financed, when you have you've excluded this group economically, politically and socially. So you bring in affirmative action to redress those marginalizations, which is what the 47 seats are. It's a redress of the marginalization so that they are given a leg up. So for me, the discussion is not about sunset clauses, because that sunset clause was there in the beginning, by the way. The sunset clause was there. But they made it permanent so that they could bring up this argument later to say that these people, what are they all about? They're about ensuring that women have presence also on the decision-making table.
But even with that presence, with that guaranteed elective positions, they still don't have that presence. That's your argument.
It's true, because they've been skewed. I mean, even in terms of look at the area which is represented by a women rep. It is the size of a county. They do not even have half the privileges that their fellow counterparts from the constituencies have. So it's also skewed against them. So when we begin to say, because there are people who complain, governors are given how many billions of shillings, and there are still people who complain they don't see the work of the governor. This woman rep, you don't even give her half as much as a member of parliament, and you still complain that you don't see what they are doing.
I'm coming back to that. Steve, help me with the arguments for this. Help me with those arguments.
I think this is what the public must understand. It's not even a question of what if, whatever. The requirement for representation of not more than 2/3 of either gender and nationals is here to stay. Let's not even debate whether we need to. It's not possible in law to amend the constitution to remove representation of women in the National Assembly and the Senate without first interfering so significantly with the structural integrity or the architectural integrity of the Constitution, and without interfering with the basic structure of the Constitution. You see, the Constitution is organized around the ideology of inclusion. That is settled. We're not in the process of remaking the Constitution. There was a whole debate what we needed to put in the Constitution, that was settled. And we agreed as a people that this Constitution need to be organized around the ideology of inclusion. Inclusion of marginalized voices, inclusion of women and youth, inclusion of persons with disabilities. So whichever format this takes, the threshold of not more than 2/3 gender principle must always be preserved. If you want to put a case for overrepresentation, then you may have to scale down the representation without interfering with the organizing philosophy. But analysts have said, and I've watched in one of these shows, the Institute for Economic Affairs saying that the idea that there's overrepresentation is a misrepresentation in and of itself. There is nothing like overrepresentation in the National Assembly and the Senate. And if it is there, that overrepresentation is not relatable to the increased number of women. In any case, we don't even have them now. In the law, and Kenyans must make peace with this, we are going to have 2/3 gender representation in parliament, by law established. You can't do it without it. The idea that you can have a sunset clause is itself ill-advised in the law, because once you set into the path of inclusion, of equal representation, you can't say after 20 years we reverse. Reversed what? It can only signal the idea that Kenyans are supposed to elect more women at the ballot as we near towards that's the so-called sunset. But if at that so-called sunset we don't have the number, then we extend.
Okay.
So it's as good as not having it there. What Kenyans need to make peace with, the idea of inclusion is here to stay.
Okay.
As long as we have the Constitution of Kenya 2010, it is here to stay. Insofar as this parliament is concerned, there is a deficit of 41 women in the National Assembly.
Yes. In the open elective places.
Yes, to achieve the two-third gender threshold, there's a deficit of 41 women. And in the Senate, there's a gap of 2 women. Now, technically, in terms of reading of the Constitution, as we understand it, the Constitution, Parliament does not comply with the law on composition, which effectively makes this Parliament, in fact, to be unconstitutional insofar as the law on composition is concerned.
Okay.
Be it as it may, we are saying there exists opportunity to remedy that. But you see, Parliament is taking its time because the ideology, again, in our governance is that of compliance based on political convenience, not compliance because the Constitution has dictated. Okay. And it's a running theme. In short, impunity is deepening and widening in our organs of government, and is beginning to bite and hurt even the governors.
Okay. Let me speak to the Member of Parliament, yes, a career politician and a lawyer, obviously. The justifications that have been put forward. First, I don't know where you stand. I know the Constitution Implementation and Oversight Committee has proposed this. But where do you stand with this? And do you find any justification?
Mijungu, thanks so much. You know, this Constitution that Steve quotes a lot gives all of us the freedom of thought. So everyone is allowed to think whatever they want to think and to propose whatever they want to propose. So let's start from there. That you will not kill a man because he thought about removing 47 members of parliament that are women. It's a debate that someone has said he wants us to have, and if he convinces all of us that he thinks these seats are useless or should not be there, then, and that's why I want to disagree with Steve, you cannot say that this is cast in stone. If he can marshal the numbers, not just in the assemblies but also in the referendum, this can be changed. But it should have justification. Now, the reason we have the 47 was to make it easier to have, because it was then seen that if you allow women to compete on a good day with men in the normal election, you definitely come short at the end of the election. So get the 47. These 47 are affirmative action seats. Okay? That's why you don't have 47 men. So that already is affirmative action. And affirmative action by their very nature, Mijungu, are never infinite, are never, going on without end. Action normally, be it
has to end somewhere.
At some point in time, they didn't have to end.
Yes.
And they could end in 2 ways. One, you've been able to get more constituencies electing women, or there's a time probably that you probably will need more men reps, not women reps. And so the debate and the thought that we could remove this should not be criminalized. It's possible that the time will come that we may not need them.
Okay.
First of all. Number 2, Mijungu, today as I speak to you, there's a bill before Parliament, which no media has picked because you choose to pick what is divisive than what is informative. I can tell you this.
Okay.
There's a bill in Parliament before the Assembly now to implement Article 100. Article 100 is the article that for me is most important because it provides that Parliament shall make a law to ensure that marginalized groups are represented in the Assembly. And this include women, youth, marginalized disabilities and marginalized groups. Now, finally we have a bill by the majority leader before the Assembly that will provide for a framework for ensuring that all these people have told you about. So assuming that that bill goes through, then you can be sure that there'll be no need for these other initiatives. Number 2, I hear Steve talking about Parliament not be compliant. It's a case of which one comes first, the egg or the chicken. Because we as in Parliament, they are a product of a system. When I went to election in 2017 or 2013, I couldn't have decided as a candidate that we will all elect more women than men. I was a candidate. All of us who are in Parliament today were candidates when elections were happening. We are a product of the system. We are not the reason there are no more women in Parliament. Members of Parliament, they are not the reason, Steve, that there are no more women. I mean, you need to understand this clearly, that members of Parliament in the Parliament today are not the reason we don't have enough women. No. We came together with them. The only thing that Parliament has refused to do, in my opinion, and which they should do, is to make a law today. And I can tell you this, Mijungu, even if that law was made today, there will be no more than the number of women today. If you do a law today, it will not bring the 41 tomorrow. What Parliament is required to do is to ensure that there's a law that provides for women to come in. And so the current law being proposed by Duale is to ensure that the electoral system, the issue is not Parliament, the system of elections ensures that on the day you go to an election, you can be sure that regardless of the outcome of the election, you will have enough women or enough men for that matter. It's not about Parliament, it's about the electoral system. And then finally, I want to talk about the issue of generally what he's talked about, inclusion. This is something that I think should live in us. It's something that we should not be belaboring. It's not something that we should be fighting to have. It should be natural that, I mean, everybody who has kids always want to have a boy and a girl. It's normal. So the issue of inclusion for men or for women, for children, people with disabilities, for youth, this should be part of our DNA. And I think someone should not be seen to be pushed to have this happening. But as Daisy said earlier, Mijungu, and I told you this earlier again, I have an issue with trying to bastardize Parliament all the time a discussion comes up. Okay. Article 27 talks about appointive and elected. I don't know if I can read it for you.
That's okay.
Because it says this. 27 says that the state, not Parliament by the way, says the state, not Parliament. So every time it says Parliament has refused, it says still the state. It says this, that in addition to the measures contemplated in clause 6, the state shall take legislative and other measures to implement the principle that no more than 2/3 of the members of the elective or appointive bodies shall be of the same gender. Now, what does this mean? It means, and this no one talks about, that Uhuru Kenyatta, when forming his cabinet, must ensure that his cabinet is a third. Now, the current cabinet is not a third.
It's not compliant.
PSS are not.
Yes.
Judiciary is not.
Nowhere.
The county governments are
anywhere.
not.
Yes.
And so what makes us think that then the guy to the course to flog is Parliament? So I want us to have this debate nationally. And
all right.
To ensure that all of us are working toward this together.
Okay.
You know, when you start blaming people become defensive.
How many times has this come to Parliament, Mheshimiwa?
Now,
the third time. And what has happened?
Not only the 2/3 gender bill.
Yes.
The president's appointees, whether to cabinet, whether ambassadors, whether PSs, the nominees are vetted by Parliament. Parliament has been accepting lists from the executive that do not meet the criteria of the 2/3. And instead of sending them back to the head of state.
Do they have that discretion to send the list back to the
Yes, the speaker can return the list and say it does not comply with the law. Because Parliament cannot endorse an illegality. They should not be endorsing an illegality.
They've been accused of being an appendage to the executive.
And I will tell you that we have, because remember we had gone to court on the issue of the cabinet in the former term.
Yes.
And Parliament had, courts had found that indeed the president was in violation of the Constitution. And so when he was reconstituting the new cabinet, we wrote to the AG, we wrote to Parliament, and we did write to the individual members of the vetting committee, advising them that the list that the president had submitted was not compliant with the court order, and therefore they should not even entertain it. They should return it to him. But what the president had done, remember he had retained 6 members of the cabinet, and those were not vetted. The list that he did submit to Parliament for vetting, which was partial, actually met the 2/3 gender rule.
Yes,
okay? And they made a point of stating that. Yeah. So that it was a game of smoke and mirrors.
You give 3 today,
exactly.
6 tomorrow.
So you withhold 6 plus the presidency, the president, the deputy president, and the AG, because that is the composition of Parliament. And then you send a list that complies with the 2/3 gender principle. And you make a point of stating that the list complies with the 2/3 gender principle. But when looked at as a whole, when you add that list to the
existing
ones, that is where you begin to see the deception. And you know, this is the thing that needs
deliberate deception.
It is deliberate deception and deliberate circumvention of the law. And this is what Steve talks about, the deepening and widening impunity. Because Every other action that we are seeing right now, even with regards to what is happening with the counties, with regards with what is happening in the basic public administration and, you know, financial administration of this country, is in keeping with that same theme of impunity, where people refuse, where the duty bearers who have sworn, and remember that they swear to uphold the Constitution. They have sworn to uphold the Constitution, to implement the Constitution. And instead what they do, they operate as though they are the law. And that is where you depart from the rule of law. Because the rule of law presupposes that you are bound by the Constitution and the law, even where it is not politically convenient and where perhaps it doesn't favor you. So you are supposed to up your skills of negotiations. But what these people do is where they meet with the law as an obstruction, they either ignore it or seek to change it. And that is the problem that we're dealing with. We talk about the rule of law, but what we have is impunity in operation.
Let me just document something. I want Kenyans to get this very well, because I consider part of my role as a lawyer as to be involved in civic education. Now, Kenyans need to understand and document some of the critical principles undergirding the Constitution. If you lose any of those principles, you lose the Constitution as we know it. Number one, I've already said, is inclusion. Inclusion is a critical safeguard or input within our constitutional setting. You can't do away with it without altering the format of the Constitution, because it's a running theme. Inclusion of the youth, marginalized communities, women, and whatever level. Let's make peace with that. It's never going to go away. You know, the second thing, which is a very important principle, is that of participation. The Constitution requires deliberate involvement, a more intimate involvement of the public in the manner in which they are governed. They say, nothing without us, nothing for us without us.
Yes.
You have to be involved every step of the way. That can't go away. You can't take the idea of public participation away from the people without altering the format of the Constitution. The third one relates to independence of critical institutions. You can't tinker or tamper with that without affecting our own organizational framework of the Constitution. These are critical safeguards. Now, when in respect to the two-third gender principle, what Kenyans must make peace with is this. The Supreme Court already gave definitively a period within Parliament, within which Parliament ought to comply. I mean, you can't debate an advisory opinion that has not been overturned. The Supreme Court said in 2012, you have up to 5 years.
Okay.
2015.
Which lapsed on 27th August 2015, to put the mechanism in place. Whatever mechanism you want to put in place, put it within 5 years. Parliament, what they did, they extended, because the law, Article 261, allows Parliament to extend the duration by 1 year, which lapsed on 27th August 2016. And I'm telling you, Kenyans must understand that post 27th August 2016, any composition of Parliament that did not comply with the two-third gender principle effectively made Parliament unconstitutional. But that does not mean that you immediately disband Parliament, because you still need this Parliament to pass that law. So, you know, we are making reasonable accommodation. Accommodation for what? Accommodation for impunity. Because the public was cornered, terribly so, that they had no option but to say, okay, fine, take time. And remember, Justice Mativo spoke to that issue in a petition that was argued before him on 27th March 2017.
Yeah.
He gave them 60 days.
Yes.
Parliament,
Failure to which?
riding on impunity, declined, rejected, failed.
I'm sure they
to pass
cited
the law.
independence.
Of course,
No, not
so
quite,
the
not quite.
bottom line is this, and Kenyans must understand that the Constitution presupposes that that transformative superstructure will be implemented in the context of a marching culture of compliance.
Okay.
Can we say that you have a marching culture of compliance in this country? Of course, the answer is no.
All right.
People obey the
I just want to add on
Constitution
what-
based on convenience, political convenience.
Okay.
If you think you should obey the Constitution,
You
do
obey
so.
it if you think you shouldn't. And
Without consequences.
David, as you comment on that, I know the first one, Justice Mativo, what was given and the extension and all. But even in April, we had the Chief Justice talking about if two-third gender rule is not actioned, then he was supposed to begin the process of dissolving Parliament.
Yes, that's true.
But we're here in July.
There are two petitions before him.
The petition. I mean, there's an overarching issue that we're discussing, which he raises and he raises. The issue of, one, leaving our Constitution, giving it life. making sure that all of us know what is in there and living it, making sure that we implement what's in there. I mean, this is something that for me needs to be done by the whole, and I've told you, the whole country, everybody else.
But the whole country doesn't legislate.
Let me just come to the issue. You know, you talk about rule of law and all this, and I've read for you Article 27. It's about the state and the people. All of us must live within that culture, that we need to respect the rule of law, respect the Constitution. As regards what we're discussing now, the two-thirds gender rule, by the way, and I can tell you this, you can take it to the bank, the nearest bank, it's going to be a lot of gerrymandering. Because the argument someone will put, and just think about this loudly, Mijungu. This parliament will say it's not this parliament that was ordered. What will you do?
That's an escapist kind of argument.
No, that's what I'm saying.
That's
what I'm saying. That they'll say, no, I told you earlier. They'll tell you that we were not in parliament that time. This is a new parliament. This was a new order and all that. I know the Chief Justice means well, and I know that the best way out of this, like Steve has said, is not dissolve parliament. The best way out of this is, can we get parliament to sit down and do the right thing?
Who do you mean can we?
And I've told you
already,
I've told you already that we already have a bill before parliament to implement 100.
But I wanted to ask you about the bill, Mheshimiwa. I wanted to ask you about that bill.
I wanted to get this clear. Okay. That for us to fix this issue of two-thirds and one-third gender bill, what is need to be fixed is the electoral system, not parliament. Because today, look, if you made a law today and say, bring in the 41 women that are missing in the assembly, and which framework are you going to be using to bring them? Nominations, right? Under which framework? The political parties. So what we are saying is this, that the best way to do this is make sure that the political parties are given duties before the elections, not after. That when you're nominating, this must happen. It's not a choice. All the political parties are told, IBC cannot clear a party candidates unless these 2, 3, 4 things
but
are
they
done.
need a framework, right?
That's what you're working on. That's what the law works on now.
That's the bill that you're saying.
There's a bill that is there that in the elections, this and this is what must be done. So that you are doing this before the elections, so that you are able to then, after elections, look, how many women have come in? How many have we missed? Or how many men have come in? How many have we missed? So that then you have a framework again within the law that is being proposed on how to fill them in. But as we speak today, even if you were to make that law, it will be the same thing you've done, where you give the big parties a chance to bring in people's girlfriends, and so you must have a framework to do this, and that's what you're working on.
And the question is, how sure are we? How confident do you think? What confidence does Parliament, the current Parliament as constituted, inspire in Kenya? Do we believe that Parliament is able even to pass the bill that is before Parliament?
For 100, I'm certain. For Article 100, I'm certain. For two-thirds gender, I cannot bet my leg.
Okay, then we are in the same position, going round.
No.
Yes.
I want us to understand this, Mijungu. And I told you this earlier. The moment, and even you today, if you put on your defense, you definitely be defensive. But if we speak together and say it's not Parliament that has to do this, it's all of us to think about this loudly. Daisy does a lot of research. Steve does a lot of research. Tell us, you guys went to court on this. What are your proposals? What is the best way to ensure that in future we don't have to go to court? We can voluntarily get a solution to our problems. It's going to work out better, a lot better than trying to blame people today or tomorrow. So I want to tell you this. Let's get a chance, look at what Duale has proposed in terms of disciplining political parties to nominate the right way, so that in case of an election, you can be certain that Parliament will have the numbers as required.
All right, time for a short break. When we come back, I'd like to, I am not aware, like you said, about the proposal by Honorable Duale, but once you open our minds, I'd like them to contribute to it. And what bothers me most, and perhaps bothers a lot of Kenyans, is how we have seen the executive interfere with Parliament, and all the time they win with Parliament. We have seen that. We have seen that. Yeah? All right, we come back and talk about that, because we really need to put this to rest and see if there's hope for the women. Right, let's take a break.
We all have dreams, but we don't always have the means to make them happen.
When I grow up, I would like to be a journalist.
Nataka kuwa mwanabiashara mkubwa.
Kadide and Melvin are two students with lots of potential.
Kulikuwa watakuwa wanasema huyu anatembea hivi na hivi, ni mko mlemavu.
Na mimi siwezi kuafford school fees.
Inspired by their stories, Safaricom is covering the full costs of their secondary education.
Khadija deserves this Safaricom scholarship. She's very good in class.
Kama si shirika la Safaricom, Melvin angeenda masomo yake.
Safaricom, nawe kila wakati.
Welcome the Molfix Band. Molfix, with its double absorbent system, absorbs the liquid immediately and traps the liquid in. Also, with its elastic side bands, Molfix offers freedom of movement. You should also try Molfix.
Leo alikuwa smart, amevaa mpaka suti na ako very serious. Alikuwa very focused.
You are working in my club, haufanyi kazi kwa other sectors.
Mazejengo misteri ametesa kutesa. Ako hadi center page.
Sasa unaniambia ndio?
Umesikia breaking news?
Kama ni ujumbe, andika kwa leso itamfikia sawa.
Usiniongeleze matope. Vitu zangu zilikuwa pale na wewe ulikuwa hapa. Sasa haziko, zimeenda wapi? Wewe kama umeshindwa na biashara, urudi Meru.
The Real House Helps of Kawangware in association with Telkom.
Join Telkom today and share life on our expanded 4G network. Telkom, moving with you.
Right, welcome back to Sidebar, and with me is Steve Ogola, who's an advocate, Daisy, and of course I have Mheshimiwa David Ochek. I'd like to read one tweet from Ndungu Wainaina. He says, Constitution 2010 has proven to be a real nuisance to political security and bureaucracy elites who are used to issuing orders without being questioned or doing whatever they wanted without accountability. No wonder they are united to amend it. Kenyans reject. I think he's talking the broader picture of what is likely to happen, and if we have to go, what Steve says, we have to at least interfere with a lot of boundaries of the Constitution. Right. But my question is this. What if the sunset clause comes and at the end of it, we do away with it and we do away with the positions, and then the next election we achieve what we are looking for, right? We get the elective position. So you said two ways: either it comes to the end of its term, or secondly, we get elected leaders who are enough, who fulfills this, right? So what happens if the following year it doesn't happen?
Let me answer that.
Yes.
And I know I'm talking to Kenyans. Let them be advised. At least now they have forgotten legal advice. This is a one-way traffic approach. I mean, in essence, even if you have a sunset clause, and I've already argued, a sunset clause is only intended to signal the urgency of how to get these extra numbers of women, you know, at the ballot. You get it? If you don't.
All right, I'm told your mic has a little challenge, but we're coming back to you. Let me speak to David as we sort out.
Because the point, just to answer the question you asked,
yes,
is that what Duale is proposing now, like I've told you, the moment you fix this in the electoral system, and I don't talk about the sunset clause, because I think for me that one is not something that I want to spend a lot of my time on. But if you pass the Duale bill, meaning that the electoral system at any point in time, in every election, will give you the desired result in terms of the gender balance and gender representation, then that stays in perpetuity, unless again amended. So this is for me the one way. If borrow is what the one way traffic, it helps. No, but having a certain clause doesn't help anybody. That one we need to be clear on.
Okay. That
I don't support anything that puts certain clause, because then you're basically kicking the can along the road. When you get 20 years again, you kick the can.
You can kick
another 20 years, kick the can. You know, it doesn't work. But if you have a foolproof system where you say that in any election,
yes. So you're going back to the Duale proposal.
In any election that you do,
yes,
the following are the ones that are going to be in the electoral system.
Okay.
And by the way, the law says, if you look at the article, the article on electoral system, it says that the electoral system is the one that's supposed to ensure that this gender rule is implemented. Not parliament, the electoral system.
Okay.
Yes. So electoral system that gives birth to parliament that are sitting today and all these other things, the one that's supposed to give rise.
So majorly, Mheshimiwa, if I hear you, you think this should be corrected at the election level.
The only way.
That is the only way to do it. But we have been unable to. Let me come back to Steve now that your mic is okay.
Let me just tell Kenyans this.
Yes.
Ultimately, what will work for National Assembly and the Senate is to lift provisions of Article 170. Let's just be bold and admit things as they are. I mean, let's not camouflage conversations. You know, we need to lift provisions of Article 177 that allows for nomination of women into the county assemblies and create similar provisions under Articles 96 and 97 to allow for nomination of additional numbers of women, such other numbers of women that may be necessary to make Parliament compliant. Now, I have read the Duale bill, the one that failed, and this Article 100 bill, I've read it. It doesn't answer the critical gaps. And I'm telling Kenyans in all honesty, I mean, I have no reason to misrepresent or misdirect myself. This is a clever attempt to do something without necessarily satisfying the requirement of the law. Already I've said it. You know, it's just that the country is stranded at the margins of time. Because in as long as we are a multi-party democracy, as long as we are a Republican government or form of governance, we will always need Parliament. So we say Parliament is, insofar as composition is concerned, Parliament is unconstitutional, but we are hamstrung. You can do without Parliament. So you just massage the egg, and they know it. They know nobody's going to dissolve Parliament no matter what. They'll come up with clever arguments that we are not that Parliament, we are this a new Parliament. So they keep on going round and not attacking the main issue. The real issue is this. Yes. Can you lift provisions of Article 177 and provide mechanisms for nomination? So then warn Kenyans at the ballot. Listen, we have already reached the level where we've agreed that, number one, our constitution and our system of governance is organized around the ideology of inclusion. So we must have those numbers in Parliament. So you better get them at the ballot to reduce opportunities for nomination. You get? Okay. Then Kenyans can then make a decision. Because, you know, experience has shown us that in terms of effective representation, in fact, women leaders are doing far much better.
That's true.
But I'm not even persuaded to continue deepening that conversation because there's nothing to justify.
Can I get
that's
a word
what we
in
need
here?
to get.
Yes. Now, I want to pick up from where Steve has left off. The mechanism that is in the counties, that 177 that he's saying is to be lifted, is not a mechanism per se, but a fallback.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
The Constitution provides that in Article 81 that the electoral system must provide a mechanism for the inclusion of, for the fulfillment of Article 27.8, which is the two-thirds gender principle, for the representation of persons with disability. And that is what now the Equality Bill is trying to say. In fact, the Supreme Court advisory of 2012 gave the 2015 timeline because that was the timeline within which Article 100, the one that they are now working on, was to actually have been in place. And if they had put it in place, it would have dealt with Article 81 issues where the electoral system provides for that inclusion with a fallback as per Article 177, whereby, because you see, political parties can submit names. And please note that it is also a subject of a court order. Katiba Institute in July of 2017, obtained a court order that compelled ORPP and IEBC to ensure that political parties, that they come up with a mechanism as the independent institutions to reject party lists that do not meet the two-thirds gender principle, so that if a political party submits a list for election that does not meet the two-thirds gender principle, for election, not for nomination, for election, that does not meet the two-thirds gender principle, that list should be rejected. Now, given the ways of our politicians and the political parties, it is quite likely that the political parties would comply in such a manner as to submit names for election, women for election in areas where they know they do not have strongholds, but they comply technically. So you would be found in a situation where After elections, we have not met that threshold. So what do you do? So you need the fallback position. So that the Article 177 type provision should be a fallback. So that in the event that you don't have the numbers, then you nominate them, you top them up. But not top up as a mechanism. Top up as a fallback plan. So that our political parties, because remember, the political party is the primary gateway to political leadership in this country. We do have independent offices, but the main and the primary gateway is through the political parties. So the political parties themselves have to ensure that they do all that they can to make sure that they meet this criteria. But having done all, then there must be a mechanism that compels
That's the question
them.
I wanted to ask Steve before I go. Just a brief answer. What happens if at the end of it all, it's not met because you're proposing it, but out of the framework? You're proposing a framework that does not exist. What happens if you file with the Register of Political Parties, you list in time, and you go and meet it or you don't meet it? You're proposing something that does not exist. What happens? What will be the remedy? Just a short answer.
The short answer is there will be a terrible breakdown in the rule of law, the end of innovation within the law as we know it. I mean, we have to be honest.
Yes.
You see, the law also presupposes that the people working towards its implementation will work with a sense of urgency.
Okay.
But if they are unable to implement these provisions, then there will be a critical breakdown in the rule of law. Will say our leaders and the government, both the political wing of government, have antagonized and disappointed the Constitution and the people.
Okay.
But all is not lost, because by the way, there's been a popular initiative called the Green Amendment Campaign, which looks into the trickery of our politicians with regards to putting in place the mechanism, and actually proposes direct elections of women. So through the Green Amendment Campaign, where you actually have seats specific for women.
But that's what we want to run away from, right? That's what we want to run away from.
It is the same
thing. I wanted to say this. Yes. You know, this is, and I want us, you know, sometimes in the world, being right is not what matters most. No. Getting solutions to a problem matters more than being right, Mijungu.
Agreed.
And so probably Steve will be right, you'll be right about the legal positions. But the best thing to do in these situations is getting a solution, not getting who is right and who is wrong. Can we work together? Because this is one of the best endeavor provisions where you say this is going to be done progressively.
Okay.
We've already done almost 10 years. So can we now say that we must get a solution to this? And can we then nudge ourselves, all of us together? Without, I told you this severally.
But not progressively. Did you say progressively?
Without a portion. I mean, if it was instant days, it would have been done by now. It is progressive. That's why you've seen that
it's taking some time.
I mean, progressive means over time.
Yes.
So that's what it means. So my point is this really, that what, for lack of a better word, what Steve proposed would be a politician's way of solving a problem, the easiest way. I would work it to 177.
It doesn't exist.
But then, what this is saying is this. We know, for example, that Jubilee is strong in Central and Rift Valley. Why can't they nominate women in their strongest position?
Yes.
ODM is strong in Nyanza and Western. Why can't they, you know? And so we put in law.
Okay.
We put it. Look, in all over the world.
Yes.
By the way, it's not just in Kenya, all over the world. If you go to the UK today, you'll be told Labour is strong in these areas and the Conservative in these areas. If you go to America, the Reds are strong in these areas and the Blues in these areas. In Kenya, we know that. So you can actually put that in law and ensure that parties are able to nominate women places where they are strong. And this is what Duale Bill does. Getting our best endeavor to ensure that this is done the neater way. I mean, people talk about so many things. They talk about parliament, wage bill, but put it in the law. Let it be within the electoral system.
And you're confident parliament will do it? 100%. All right. Let me get back to what Steve says, because he says the Duale Bill, he's read it. I have not read it.
Yeah, I've read it.
I have not read it. But he says it's sort of trickery from the politicians. Do you agree with him?
I know. Mijungu, politicians can be given so many names. But then politicians are here to stay, like he said. There are things that are here to stay, like political parties and politicians.
So we let them deceive us and continue to drive us?
No, I'm for, and probably you know my history now, Mijungu.
Yes.
And I call black,
You're
black.
one.
I call black, black, and white, white.
Yes.
There's a way in which we must make our politicians behave well.
Okay.
We must not allow so many aberrations and a lot of mediocrity from our politicians, because then you keep talking about this every day, the politicians are this and that. We must put them to account. We must put them to the law and tell them, you must implement this, you must implement this. Where that is not done, you go his way. Go to court, force your way, get court orders, push them. Let us nudge all of us do the right thing for the constitution.
In a country that court orders are disregarded and obeyed at will.
We can't give up. We must just keep at it.
Some of these conversations may appear complex. The viewers. So what I want to summarize this issues in this manner is this. It seems that we're either having pre-constitutional conversations of what should be done as if the constitution is not there, or extra-constitutional conversations, meaning conversations that have no reference to the law. Kenyans must understand that in all honesty, the debate around the timelines and the inclusion of women in our houses of representation, that debate was settled before the enactment of the Constitution. It was settled. The timelines was already settled definitively by the Supreme Court. We are outside that timeline. And we are now debating so leisurely and so casually whether we should do it or should not. Now that philosophy, that's what I'm saying, the philosophy of moving based on convenience, not compliance, is what will hurt us. I reject as false.
Okay.
But it is what will hurt us. Hurting us.
If we go to the next session, you will see it's part of the running theme. It's only, maybe I could say the entire political wing's philosophy is that the Constitution is not the Constitution until it speaks their political interests. And nothing is urgent until it matters to them. So
forgetting that there be a time that exists.
So be it the two-thirds. I told you again, the Constitution is a living document. It's not a document cast in stone.
Okay.
It reflects our lives. It reflects how we live. And saying, for example, like what Steve is saying, now I agree with him probably that we need to comply, yes. But when we did the Constitution in 2010, I mean, all of us knew, and it was said, there are a couple of things we knew were going to be done pronto. Those things are going to be done over time. Trying to be so mechanical, for me, in some cases, I don't have any problem. I've told you, I'll repeat this severally. Let's work towards solutions that for the posterity. Because if you say, okay, let's do 177. So you bring in this 41. The good elections next time, do that. Are you encouraging election of women?
I know. That's why we are.
You are not
that's why we are, because they sit comfortable and know that we'll import 177.
Coming in.
Exactly.
And no, exactly. Wait, I think that there are certain things. You know, I like Mheshimiwa David Ocheng very much, and I agree with very many of the things that he says, but I want to disagree on this. When we talk about the things that were to be done pronto, remember that the 2/3 gender rule was to be done pronto.
Exactly.
That pronto, a third must be there. Steve has very eloquently stated that the architecture of the Constitution envisions inclusivity. Okay? Now, part of that inclusivity means working towards a more equitable and equal society. So that the idea is that we are looking towards 50-50. Ground zero is a third. A third is not the pinnacle in sight. The third is not the end. A third is the starting point.
Okay.
For women, we have not gotten to the starting point. And I think it's important for me to say this. And Kenyans don't seem to realize this. And we had been saying it from the time, because we've been on this journey of the implementation of the 2/3 since 2011. The politicians, the political elite, and this particular administration has used the 2/3 gender rule to undermine the Constitution. It was the dipping stick. If we can successfully exclude over half of the population, then everything is fair game. And we are beginning to see the results of that impunity now. People at that time thought it's a women's issue. They were not seeing the 2/3 as a constitutional issue.
Okay.
They were seeing it as a women's issue. But now we are beginning to see serious obstruction of the law. We are seeing a departure completely from constitutional norms, so that at this point in time, it's anybody's guess how we go. They are not abiding by the Constitution. They don't abide by court orders. So, but what can we do? Because we don't give up. We believe in the rule of law.
Yes.
We have to use the mechanisms that the laws provide. But then we are dealing with people who actually don't care about the law because they are the law.
Hold your thoughts, Daisy.
The 2/3 gender principle was used to undermine the Constitution. And I hope Kenyans see it right now. So if you talk about removing the 2/3 gender principle or even removing the place of women, You can be sure your place will also be removed because as we even say this, the place of the disabled is not there and the youth have also been excluded. But people are not seeing this as
Hold your thought, Daisy, because we need to take a short break just for 2 minutes. When we come back, we conclude that discussion. And I want to introduce a new twist. What do you guys think about proportional representation in Parliament? Is that something that you think Kenyans can go for? What's happening in South Africa? And do you think that's a way we can succeed with this? Right. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
In a country of over 200 million people, finding suitable and affordable housing can be quite a challenge. I am in Lagos, Nigeria to have a first-hand experience of what would be rented space while house hunting.
As a trainer, you have to think as a horse so that I know when they need to exercise, when they need to eat, when they need to be washed, when they need to be in a boma.
There's more to Zambia than just copper mining. Small businesses are key drivers of economic growth the world over. I'm here to meet entrepreneurs who are finding creative ways of doing business.
Taste imeweza na bei imeweza. Streetwise 2 is now at 350 shillings.
Wow.
2 pieces of original recipe or hot and crispy chicken and regular chips. It's finger-licking good. NTV Sasa, kipindi pekee cha maslahi ya jamii.
Kitovu kinapaswa kuchukua muda gani kukatika?
Kitovu hakipaswi kupita siku 7.
Jumatano hii kitakukujia moja kwa moja kutoka kaunti ya Mombasa, kuanzia saa 5 hadi saa 7 mchana. Kauli mbiu ni kampeni ya kutoa chanjo dhidi ya maradhi ya polio katika kaunti 001. Ungana nasi Jumatano hii moja kwa moja kutoka Mombasa katika NTV Sasa.
Right, we are back with Daisy, Steve and David. And of course, we are discussing the proposal by the Committee on Implementation and Oversight of the Constitution that we should, after the sunset clause, we should do away with the position of the women representative. And there is a proposal, there's a bill in Parliament by Honorable Duale, which Steve thinks is not going to address this problem, and he thinks we should find a long-lasting solution. But before we took a break, Daisy was speaking, and one of the things that I want to throw this panel in the works, which you don't want, but I'll bring it. Do you think it's time now that we're talking about amending the Constitution, we should do proportional representation?
Who is talking about amending the Constitution? You see,
it's the politicians talking about it.
This is the other thing. Yes. Okay, I know the politicians are talking about it, but you see, they're not also talking about it for the purposes of enhancing our governance structures. Because if they were honest about wanting to get mechanisms, they would have tried with what we have already.
Okay.
So for me, this is a conversation that we must not entertain. We must take the bull by the horns. We can't be defeated by the challenge and then decide that we want to now bring a new bull or bring in a new calf and let's try something else. The discussion around proportional representation is one that has been had even from the days of Bomas. And it is a good mechanism in terms of, it is perhaps the one mechanism that can guarantee inclusion of all groups, women, youth, persons with disability, diversity of ethnicities. It is. But right now, it is not the system that we have. Okay. And I think, for me, one of the biggest challenges that I have is when you're dealing with a largely, dishonest political class, to begin to try and talk about, solving issues while giving them the key to unlock areas that they need to unlock, it is like setting yourself up for defeat.
Mijungu, if you open up that debate,
it is
I can tell you what
up
happened.
For defeat.
Yes. If you open up that debate, we'll remove elective from the Constitution.
Yeah.
Really, you lose it totally. Okay. Let's not open the debate on these 2/3, but on
proportional.
On proportional, my problem is this:
yes,
that we don't have political parties properly so called. So you can only do that if you have political parties properly so called. In that, you have parties, not tribal conglomerations.
Not special
if you had political parties that we know have proper following in all over the country, and you can trust them to be able to do what is done. You see, in South Africa, for example, the example you give about South Africa is that we know how strong ANC is, and we know how.
Okay.
And we know how the system works.
Okay.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I know it's going to come up in this raging debate, but I think I would want to ask all of us on the issue of 2/3 gender. Let's keep what we have. The day you open up the debate, Steve and Daisy,
you lose
the debate about elective and appointing Parliament, and I tell you this tongue in cheek, we will just delete elective and remain the appointed only. So let's not go into that debate. Let's even the proportionate. Let's not go into that debate now. Let's implement the Constitution as it is. Let's get away of dealing with it the way it is, and summon our best instincts and just do what is right for the country.
I agree.
Okay. Steve.
I mean, I agree.
We can't open that debate right now.
I don't want to expand what I already co-opted into. Let's not. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. All right. Let's begin. Now that we've settled that, I think Kenyans are watching, and the good thing is that we have a way forward in that bill. Let's now change the debate and talk about what's happening between the county governments, National Assembly, and the Treasury. You saw the match that happened a day ago. That was yesterday, right? Yes. Let's listen to this, then we can discuss that.
Kwa hivyo wale ambao wanakaa huko Nairobi, huko bungeni, na wanaanza kucheza karata na ugatuzi, wajue ya kwamba sisi magavana tuko tayari. Bado mapambano, na tutaanza mapambano.
But they can justify 3.2 trillion budget. The only money that is visible, that is doing something, that you can go to 47 county governments, be able to see whether it is in healthcare sector, water, roads, agriculture, ni pesa ya ugatuzi peke yake.
We have had frustration as counties, as we are told that the National Assembly, which was supposed to introduce this particular bill, reintroduce this particular bill in the National Assembly, they are on recess. They had to go on recess for 2 weeks despite the urgency of this particular issue.
We are actually a functional dictatorship as we sit as a country. Because at the moment, nobody can ask any question. People just sit down, they decide counties will get money, they will not get money. They are denying counties money and seeking for night allowances.
All right, Steve, let me begin with you. What really is happening? I mean, there's no way the National Assembly and the Senate can fail in mediation. I mean, there is no way if these two chambers of the House had the real interest of Kenyans at heart.
First of all, Kenyans must understand that we have there's a political process and there's a legal process. Now, the legal process in this matter concerning county revenue allocation is very limited. It's very thin. It's a very thin strand that does not, in my own view, respectfully, require litigation. The political process requires conversation. So I see that there's a terrible decline in honesty, because what is happening is this. The only legal question emerging is that, is it right, is it proper in the law that because the division of revenue failed, that you can then do appropriation bill? Of course, in terms of procedure, no. Was it even right that the president can assent such a bill if the division of revenue bill failed? Of course, the answer is no, because the process is that you finalize division of revenue and then you move the next step.
Yes.
Now, so that's very easy. I mean, I've just solved it already. now, the more difficult issue concerns the political question, and with the court, and I've already argued elsewhere, the court will burn its fingers if it attempts to countervail what is within the remit of the political wing of government. What is within the remit of the political wing of government is this: to agree and settle on the amounts to be allocated the counties. And I want some honesty here. Here's what the law says, and actually this is what happened. 6 months to the next financial year, now this financial year, the Commission on Revenue Allocation published and shared their recommendation on revenue allocation, where they said, we proposed 335 billion.
Yes.
They shared it with the National Assembly, they shared it with the Senate, they shared it with the county assemblies, they shared it with the county executive, and they shared it, importantly, with the national executive. Now, in March this year, 3 months or about 4 months to the next financial year, the national government, through the cabinet secretary, the treasury, published the division of revenue bill with a figure lower than what the Commission for Revenue Allocation was proposing. They published a figure of 310. Remember, we have, if you look at article section 190 of the Public Finance Management Act, and 191, we have an organ there known as IBEC, the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council. Who chairs this IBEC? It is the Deputy President. Who sits there? The Chairman of the Council of Governors. What does the law say? The law says, even before the CS Treasury publishes this bill, he must communicate the contents of that bill to IBEC.
So you say they were aware of it?
That's what I'm saying.
That's
It's
what
the
you're saying,
politics.
they were aware of it.
Listen, the governors, I mean, we must be honest. The president was aware that these figures that as proposed was 335 billion. The government was aware, or everybody, every political actor was aware that the figures had been slashed to 310. It was not an abrupt maneuver.
Okay.
Now, they start on it. You see, the idea of communicating is so that if you have reservation, you can communicate. Now, another thing is this, which we're not being told. You see, the Commission on Revenue Allocation. Look at the Constitution itself, Ken. Article 217 of the Constitution says the CS Treasury can vary the recommendation of the Commission on Revenue Allocation with reasons, which means that those recommendations are not binding. It's set in the law. So if you frame a question asking the court to interpret, I mean, I've already just interpreted it. So the thing is this. What is happening, and which I agree with the Council of Governors, I think the national government, the buck stops with the presidency. You know, because the Treasury, the Cabinet Secretary, sits in the Cabinet, which is chaired by the President, and he comes up with these figures, and he deviates from the figures provided by the Commission on Revenue Allocation. There is a clear design by the national government, for sure, to undermine devolution. That is settled. But how to solve that problem is not to litigate it.
Okay.
You get? It seems that what this case is doing, it's communicating to us that there's a sharp deterioration and a complete breakdown in consultation and deliberations and consensus building. Now, if there's a dramatic breakdown or a drastic breakdown in consultation and consensus building, there is no way the court can encourage consensus if the political actors don't want to build consensus. I think the better way to go is this. The Council of Governors must retreat again with the national executive. And they say, if you do not give us these figures as agreed, now that mediation collapsed, let us agree to appropriate whatever is the bare minimum that was agreed upon so that the government gets running as we then negotiate on the deficit.
So you agree with Duale. Why don't you use the 310 that you've been given?
Now, that's what I was saying. Now, that's what I was saying. You see, now, fact of the matter is this. And it's the same philosophy as a running theme. The governors have been cornered.
Okay.
Because there's the law, the national government has refused to comply with that law, and now they are left stranded. And the court will not force the national government to comply with something that is entirely remitted the political processes.
Okay.
So, which means now, just like the two-third gender issue was stranded there, now Council of Governors have been left stranded because they know you can't enact an appropriation bill without the division of revenue bill. But that is what's going to happen. And you know, no court will stop disbursement of money.
Yeah, because
the court will say, fine, you can appropriate and then work on the rest later. So that is what we are talking about. The National Assembly is at fault. What Kenyans must understand, insofar as division of revenue is concerned, the National Assembly is at fault,
okay.
Treasury is at fault,
okay.
The President is at fault, because there is no need of having the Commission on Revenue Allocation that makes recommendations which you ignore.
Okay.
Just because you have the liberty to ignore.
It. All right.
That undermines devolution.
Let me also hear from David. That standoff that now threatening to shut the country. Actually, I think the governor said the country has been shut because they don't have money.
If you check the Hansard of the National Assembly, every year, for 4 years, I stood on the floor and said this, that if the Senate were to achieve anything in their 4 years in Senate, last parliament, was to change the constitution, to make the Commission of Revenue Allocation the first and the last port of call in dividing revenue.
Okay. So once they make the decision, it's absolute.
You can check the Hansard of it, because this, what he just told you now, look at 2015 to 16. It's painful that we got a commission that has 9 members. Its only mandate, the rest are basically smoking. Its only mandate, Mijungu, is to determine the formula for revenue sharing between national and county governments. Its only mandate. 9 members, full-time, paid salaries. Now, if that's the only mandate they have, and the Minister for Finance can disagree with it willy-nilly, he can decide, I'll not, and he has never. For 6 years, the Minister for Finance has never agreed with the CRA. So why should we even have fear in the first place? So if you're looking for Senate doing its job, I'll tell you this one thing that you have put long time ago for a referendum. Make CRA the first and last call. They have the scientific competence. They have the only competence they are supposed to build is to ensure that the formula they propose is a formula that is foolproof, that is defendable, and that everyone agrees with. Once that is set, then we must ensure that we ring-fence it. No one can interfere with it. Not Treasury, not National Assembly. By the way, and you should know this, governments don't work in isolation. We got one government, 3 arms. We don't have 3 governments. And so most of the time you'll find national, and this is as it should be, by the way, all over the world, parliaments would defer to Treasury on matters of money. And so if Treasury tells National Assembly that, look, this is what we propose and these are the reasons, you can be sure most of the time National Assembly will defer to Treasury. This happens all over the world because of the competences to determine what is best for the country in terms of money.
Okay.
So National Assembly would most of the time defer to Treasury on advice in terms of this division of revenue. And that's why you don't want to open that debate. You want to say that CRA's formula is final. Okay. Now, on the standard we're having now, by the way, I have to tell you this, it isn't about division of revenue, in my opinion. It's pent up anger from Senate over so many other issues that they think they have lost.
Okay.
And that's why one morning they decided to do a sitting,
look at the bill.
Put aside the order for that day and look at our relationship with the National Assembly and decide through a resolution of the Senate that we're going to court. You know what the National Assembly did? 3 weeks later, we revenged and did our own resolution to take Senate to court.
And a lot more other things.
That's the point I'm making to you. So it's not about division of revenue alone. It's about so many other things that we have refused to agree on. And I wish this debate could be open, but because of time. I mean, once all of us understand what our roles are, we know that Senate's job is this. Now, the Senate's biggest job, under the Constitution, you can check now,
96.
is to take care of the interests
of the county.
This is their most important job. And how do you take care of the interests of the counties, Mijungu, if you cannot give the money they require? By ensuring that CRA is well tooled and is well respected.
Okay.
It's failed. And that's why you hear Senate talking about Kenya Airways. They got a job to do. You got food on your table, you're looking at your colleagues' food and saying, this is better. This is where we are, and that's the problem we have. But talking about what I said earlier, I think all of us are behaving badly. The presidency, the president, including the deputy president in that order, National Assembly, Senate. We are behaving like people who don't, there's no adult in the house. So that we're having, county governments are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. And the fact that we must agree with that and live with that fact that we must always give them money should not miss anybody's imagination. So I think, I'll repeat this for the umpteenth time, that sometimes cooperation, sometimes talking to one another, sometimes agreeing to disagree is better than always trying to be right. The governors are going to court to try to ensure that they're... And by the way, Steve, I want to agree with the governors on just one score. Settle this debate.
Once and for all.
Once and for all.
But
either way,
they tried in 2014,
problem is this, that a well-guided court may say, no jurisdiction, this is your issue, sort it out. Because mediation under the law is not time-bound. You can talk and then sleep and then talk again and get a solution. So for me, I think I would just want the president to be
they tried in 2014.
The president should be...
15. They've been trying to...
Dr. Mijungu, I'll give you an example. This one, I want the president to be the adult in the house. There are times in this country when if the president and the opposition want something in the parliament, they get it.
Yes.
So we cannot sit out and wait for so long and make things go so bad. Then we want to come and say we are magnanimous. We are now trying to buy. Let's do it in time and save us from all of this drama.
What's happening? Yes.
I want to agree with that last point, because it is true. Our politicians are behaving badly, and what we have is actually a political problem with the politicians trying to score brownie points. And who is hurting? It is the ordinary mwananchi. Because when you talk about government shutdowns, when you talk about hampering the work of counties, the service delivery, it is the ordinary mwananchi who is suffering. And nobody seems to be seeing that. People are just looking at where they score brownie points. But having said that, I do want to say one thing. You know, it's important to look at the history of this country, because I wonder if it is not deliberate, if all these political shenanigans are not deliberate and deliberately aimed at stifling devolution to the extent that it doesn't deliver what on expectation. If you go back to the history of this country, at independence, let us not forget that in Kenya, we had a bicameral house, we had a Senate, we had we had jimbos, the federal systems. And how did they do away with them? They starved them of cash. That's actually what happened. The executive, using all manner of means, including constitutional amendments and political maneuvers, strangled the jimbos to the extent that they could not deliver on services and rendered them completely powerless. Now that is, it seems that's where we're headed. That is exactly where we're headed. Because when, at the point where the president saw that the appropriations bill has not been passed, the Division of Revenue Act has not been passed, I mean the Division of Revenue Act has not been passed, he should have called in people, you know, because it implicates on service delivery. It implicates on the ability of government to be able to deliver on expectation, what the people are expecting. But instead, what have we seen? We see running rallies all over the place, the politicians, you know, trying to score brownie points. And at the end of the day, what is happening? The wheels are slowly grinding. So for me, it is that thing. We need to see the political will. We hear the talk that devolution is here to stay. But what we see from the actions of our politicians are that we are daily trying to kill devolution while engaging in a high-stakes propaganda campaign against devolution, against governors, you know, citing all manner of reasons, you know. Whereas, at the end of the day, there are other maneuvers that are going on with presentations of how we can make things better, not by abiding by the law, but by bringing in new structures. So I think that these are political games, and they are dangerous political games. Because right now, Kenyans, they are beholden to devolution. So tampering with devolution is also tampering with the interests of the people. And I don't think that our politicians want to cause us a situation where we ignite this thing to an extent that it now becomes, we are pulling Kenya from the brink if it has not fallen off.
All right. And even as you comment, on the 15% that is required by the Constitution, the Jubilee government said they increased it even without entrenching it in the Constitution. By the way, is it working?
But for which year?
No, it has not been increased.
They said they just did it, you know, for good measure.
No, they have not. That's another lie.
It was a lie.
You know, the Commission on Revenue Allocation has said that the highest disbursements has been 17%.
17, okay.
If you do proper calibration, it's 17%. Now, there's just one point that we need to settle. Counties need money, not as a matter of favor from the national government, but as a matter of, by a law established.
Yes.
You get? You can't then just take your time and decide when to punish the counties and when to support them. Now, the second thing is this. The money that they need, the amount that go to the counties will not be determined in court. Let's also settle that.
Of course.
That figure will not be determined by the Supreme Court. It won't be determined by the High Court because it's a political question. Of course. What the courts can determine is the procedural and processual issues, which are mainly meaning if you're supposed to do A and then B, if you're doing B without doing A, the court can say, hey, listen, I can countervail. Go back and do A first before you can do B. Which means if you're supposed to pass the Division of Revenue Bill before you do the appropriation bill, then you can't do a appropriation bill. You can't spend. Go and pass this. Or if you're truly cornered, the way now we are really cornered, well, spend, but try to regularize. You know, that's the kind of, now, you know, we have really pushed this country to disparate levels.
What happens to...
No, there's a provision in the Constitution, Article 22.
No, I want this to settle. I want this to settle. I want this so that Kenyans can understand. In the perfect setting, you do the Division of Revenue Bill first.
Always. It's always been that.
Always.
Which is the figures
the
there
basis.
Is what now informs the budgetary statement and then the appropriation bill.
In the government and counties also.
You know, so, and then you can start spending. You get. But now you see, the financial year is running. The Division of Revenue Bill was not passed. In between, you will have, if there's a stalemate here, you will have to do the appropriation bill to be able to spend. So one, the court can say, well, step B cannot be completed without completing step A. But if the government is truly cornered, the state is cornered, by the way, well, perform step B with a warning. That is not desirable. Now,
so you have thought a bit. Like, for example, what they're going to do probably in the next 2 weeks. So you have this matter in court going on, 14, 15 days. We're going back next week. You never know. And it's so untidy. So then, before the court is able to manage itself, they have done what they're saying they're supposed to do. They have they have agreed, the Division of Revenue Bill is passed, and then, you know, it's so dirty. And you know.
Let me just settle this. These are processual issues. These are procedural questions, which are very easy to deal with, because just pointing out at the law.
I don't think that's so easy as you say, Steve.
What is difficult is this. Hold on. What is difficult is this, and this is, I think, is the gist of the grievance.
Yes.
The gist of the grievance is this. The national government is treating county allocations as a favor.
Okay.
But the counties are not as alert as they may want us to believe, because they are intergovernmental structures.
Yeah.
They should have raised an alarm early.
Right, at their meetings, yes.
These people, I mean, the chairman of the Council of Governors sits in IBEC. He sits there.
I think they have raised, to be fair to them.
So in terms of, he could capture that. The recommendations by the Commission on Revenue Allocation are published well in advance. Now, then Parliament itself, both houses, the Senate and the National Assembly, must also understand that they have a binding obligation in law to pass these laws. So there's a breakdown in decency, there's a breakdown in commitment to the Constitution.
Okay.
Now that is the settled issue. Okay. Because there's a breakdown in commitment to the Constitution, people are doing things without looking at the timeline set out in the law, but based on convenience, without looking at the organizing philosophy that power and resources must be dispersed.
Okay.
You know, but you're dispersing them as a matter of favor, not as a matter of compliance. There's no reason why, for sure, and I agree with the governors, why in the last financial year you disburse, let's say, 310, and now this year you want to disburse the same figure. You can't do that. And the national government is reserving higher figures.
The budget has gone up.
It has gone up.
Has gone up.
Yeah. But you know,
when you reach where we've reached now, is where then the citizenry takes over. I can tell you, the level of hopelessness in this country has never been where it is. And this is where we're now going to be calling upon the citizens to be able to engage on this. Because look, it's not just on this division of revenue. We've failed as parliament, we've failed as executive, even the judiciary in so many places has failed in so many ways. And I believe that the citizens need to start getting engaged in this. And all of us are busy, parents trying to get their children to go to sleep, trying to get school fees, trying to feed the children. So people want to say, let them do this. Let them deal with this.
It's not our najua, our ndio wamepewa jukumu.
Okay.
You have been given the responsibility and you're failing.
No, not quite. What I mean is different, Daisy. Like someone will tell their son that, okay? I think we need to take this debate back to the people. Okay. Not to change the constitution, but to ensure that what there is implemented. We need to get this back. And sometimes I mourn the death of civil society in this country. Because these are issues, I tell you, that if we had what we had sometime when we were growing up, this would not happen. Okay. But everyone now thinks it's good to support government and all this, and and the fact that now the government has become more repressive than any other government. They're even now controlling the freedom of thought, of conscience, of association. So you fear.
But it is not without trying. How many court cases have civil society brought?
No, I agree. I'm only saying I'd be more the vibrant one that there was, and there was more than you and Steve, a couple of guys helping, putting your hands.
Oh no, they are still there. I want to defend my colleagues in civil society. Civil society has been vibrant.
No, they are not as vibrant. I'm doing a comparison.
The time of Orengos.
Just doing a comparison that it's not as vibrant as it was because those who were there, most of them.
But you know what happened after the election?
Not even after the election. There's been also systematic campaign to kill civil society. Just like they have been killing everything.
That's true. But
kill devolution, kill civil society,
devolution is still here.
This time, then it gets involved. And Mijungu, I need to tell you this. If Kenyans feel Parliament is failing, in my opinion, I hope Kenyans are watching and listening to themselves. It's for them to take over this country. In the next election, get MPs who understand your needs. Okay. Get MPs who understand your feelings. Get governors who understand your feelings, and get a president who understands your feelings. But the way we are working today, we are being decided for.
Okay. We vote for them and they decide for us.
We are being decided for.
All right.
Almost everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have taken a lot of time to talk about that. I'll give you an opportunity to conclude on what's happening. But I want us to take a look at the cartoon of the week, because it is something that is of a big discussion also in the country. The Ministry of Interior is really trying to deal with the betting companies. And this is how our cartoonist captured it. Let's take a look at this, then we can comment on it, even as we close. All right, that's it. That's Matiang'i. You hit it on this end, the other one comes out from the other one, the other hole, yes. So that's really what's happening. But he's really tried, and today we have information that he had issued deportation orders for 17 directors of different betting companies who are supposed to be deported from Bulgaria, Italy, and that I saw your comment, Daisy, even as we close this.
For me, this is just a manifestation of how things are done, where the government is asleep on the job, and when things get out of hand is when they wake up to start doing the things. These companies have been in operation for a very long time. They've been advertising. In fact, they are some of your biggest revenue streams, yes. Media houses. And people have been complaining about them and how they are going about it. But I do think, anyway, better late than never. I wish them the best. I hope that they will be able to regulate, this industry, and not just this industry, but have a handle on many other things, because it's not just in the betting sector that things are going wrong. The government needs to step up its regulatory role, its oversight role, and make sure that, we are not like a city without walls.
Okay, and your parting shots on what we have been discussing, because we have to close.
My parting shot is that I think it's also, I want to support what David has said, that it is time for Kenyans to wake up to the reality that the leadership of your country really matters at a political level, at every level, executive, parliamentary, MCA level. Kenyans are right now, staggering under the weight of, heavy, oppressive cost of living, lack of productivity, and instead of actually discussing the issues that can, harness the productivity of this country and deal with the day-to-day needs of people, our representatives are busy throwing brownie points. And this is the price that you pay for not being attentive to the kind of leadership that you actually go and vote for. So every 5 years, every fifth year, we are given an opportunity as Kenyans to exercise our sovereign right to vote for those people who will represent us. And I think it's time for us to have this conversation. How do we ensure that we get those right people? Because we just cannot get it wrong in 2022. Kenya cannot continue this way. We are increasingly becoming an example of how not to do things.
All right. The cartoon and your parting shot.
I'll do both together.
Yes.
You know, Mijungu, when I look at the next 6 months, 12 months in the country, I shudder. Because if you see the political players are already planning to divide us as a country. They're already sharpening the tools of division and slicing us into pieces and saying this doesn't belong here, this doesn't belong there, this should be done, and all this. When you hear that we are going to import maize, when there's so much maize in the country, that's not being bought. Yet we also know that tonight so many families are going to sleep hungry, students are going to not miss exams at the universities and secondary schools because they can't afford school fees. There's so many parents who cannot afford this health care. And you're talking about big, big things out there. It sinks your heart. No wonder most young people have decided that the best thing to do is to sit home and bet. Right? Yes. Because we've refused to give them alternatives. We've refused to give them sources of livelihoods. We refuse to give them hope. We've refused to inspire them. We refuse to tell them that another better world that rewards hard work and meritocracy is possible. We refuse to do that, and that's why, by the way, you can deport as many Chinese or as many petty companies you want. This will crop up in different formations like you've seen in that cartoon. One thing that this country doesn't do well is we make so many laws. We enforce none. And then we come think about it after the fact. There are laws on betting. These companies were licensed. Again, there's a law. Where were we? Where was Mijungu when these companies were being registered, or the minister in charge of it? Where was the betting control board when these companies were being registered? So we've refused to enforce our laws, and we want to complain to other. That's why the other day, so in Parliament, we are now blaming Tanzanians and Ugandans for our local problems because we don't want to own up. I wish we could own up as a people. And you know, when the handshake happened, I felt very nice that this is going to be a rebirth. But then as the days come by, you see it's another way of dividing the country and trying to score political points. God help us get a better way out of our morass.
Okay, Steve.
Well, on the cartoon, I think it just extends the philosophy of abrupt maneuvers by the government. You don't have a problem, now you do have a problem. You don't have a solution, now you do have a solution. Instant coffee solution. By the way, these deportations can be challenged. The government has the right to deport, but the person, the deportee, has the right to judicial recourse to challenge the grounds for deportation, but they never give an opportunity. I just think people have not picked it up. You know, but again, the philosophy of doing what is politically convenient as opposed to what is constitutionally compliant is what governs our, you know, what informs our governance. But my parting shot is this. Kenyans must understand that we have 4 critical pillars undergirding the Constitution. Number 1 is the robust structure of the Constitution. Because without the Constitution, that requires inclusion, requires a participation, requires dispersal of powers, and requires independence of critical institutions of governance, we would not be talking as we're doing today. We have that framework. The second critical pillar, as I've said, is the political will. You must have a matching political culture. You may have a constitution that has the reputation for inclusion, you know, for participation, for dispersal of powers, for independence of its institutions. But if the office holders are not co-opted into that philosophy, the constitution will fail terribly. Okay. And I'm telling you, this constitution is failing, not because it has no capacity to succeed, because the people that are responsible for implementing it are not as enthusiastic as the constitution had hoped.
Okay.
So it's failing. And that's why we're seeing this kind of political brinkmanship, left, right, and center, in every format and facet of our governance. The political institutions or the political wing of government must retreat and reflect. What is the legacy? You know, the people who are in government in 2013 and 2017, I mean broadly, the executive and the National Assembly and the 2 levels of government. can we really say that they have done justice this in terms of animating the Constitution in the way in which it was intended and in the manner in which the Constitution had hoped for?
Okay.
I think the answer is no.
Okay.
So lastly, in terms of renovations, I want to appreciate public vigilance, because public vigilance is very important in terms of animating the Constitution, saying, hey, listen, we're not going to allow that because that's what the law says. You must do it per the law, not what you're doing. You know, you just tell them, even if you know they won't do it, you just tell them. Sometimes public interest litigation achieves one critical success of just documenting the grievance, removing it from private spaces, bringing it to the fore, and saying, listen, and that is what this petition or this advisory opinion seeks to achieve. The Council of Governors have documented neatly the political problems, even if the court does not solve them, but they're now there, well documented. I really pray and urge Kenyans, starting with the leadership, to reflect on the kind of legacy you want to leave behind, on the kind of the future you want to bequeath your children. Because there'll be leaders after this country. If we don't reflect, we'll have problems and we'll be stranded at the margins of time.
All right. Thank you very much. A good way to put it. Steve, thank you very much. David and Daisy, thank you for your contribution tonight. And I hope people are listening, and I like what you said off camera. You know, at the end of the day, there's a push that will succeed finally. There's a push that happens even beyond the cameras, beyond what we say. So I want to thank you tonight for coming and sharing your perspectives and opinion on these very important issues that bedevil our country at this particular time. Let's do the last part of the show. And 10 years ago, to the day today, Kenya was just recovering from the 2007-2008 post-election violence. Now, the investigators were closing in and the suspects were put on alert. The debate over how and where they could be tried was rife in Parliament and, of course, on the streets. Now, tonight we focus on the debate that was in Parliament. You remember? Don't be vague. Go to The Hague. You remember that? Now, the date is the 16th July 2009. The headline, this was the headline: Ruto beats a retreat, rejects Hague trial. Now, Ruto was the Minister for Agriculture. Now, he backed the ICC route at that time. And now, after changing, he was rooting for the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation team. Now, William Ruto, as it was reported, was at it again yesterday. Tired of pushing for The Hague, he has now turned full circle and wants post-election violence cases handled by the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission. Now, Ruto has in the past argued strongly for sponsors of the violence that killed the 1,133 to be tried by the International Criminal Court at The Hague, instead of having them dealt with locally. While opposing the local trials, Ruto had said that those would reignite ethnic clashes. That was the reason given. A good place to end our show tonight. Thank you very much for watching our show. And of course, we go off air, but we're still online. I see there's a lot of active comments, and we've been scrolling them. That's now the reason why we've not been able to read them. But just one final one from Alex, now that we're talking about members of Parliament. Alex says, Parliament is operating on a dead conscience. The failure is glaring and they can't even defend the interests of the people. They are only looking at their stomach while Kenyans are jobless and hungry. Not a departure from most of the things we've said here, but I know the argument will be that don't condemn Parliament. But a good place to end. Good night. Thanks for watching. Before
Wake up to nothing but the best in news, conversation starters, and hard-hitting interviews that keep you informed for the day ahead.
Up and early, 6 on the nose, these people don't sleep. Fix first the data protection law, then we come up with the number.
Exactly my question to CS Joe Mushero.
Welcome to Living with Us. I'm your host, Sharon Mundia. Boy, have you missed out.
Stop your wheel, game done.
Thank you for joining us on NTV today.
We have our reporters in different locations.
NTV is right here to bring you everything from the beginning to the end.
Hii ni NTV Sasa.
Kuna mambo mengi sana ambayo yanafanyika.
Sasa ni kumtuliza. Hii inaitwa sensory integration.
Shughuli pevu ya kudunda viwanjani narejea kwake
na kurudisha hapa studioni.
Kuna mengi ambayo yanaendelea kujiri katika maeneo tofauti.
Tunavyoelewa nasema nini? Vimeundwa.
NTV in the morning. All you need to know to start your day.
We are Nation Media Group. Talk to us. Send us your feedback on any of our products, availability or content to help us serve you better. A member of our team will ensure your issue is resolved within 24 hours and you receive a response. Go ahead, SMS 40684 or WhatsApp 0748 150 634. SMS is absolutely free of charge. Nation Media Group cares.
When you meet a Luo carrying his briefcase, don't ask him whether he's going to work. Luos don't go to work. We attend to professional commitment.
Gangster, main rule. Avoid eye contact with your fans. Mutazoyana.
Mtu ako na homa, lakini kusiniza na sneeze, unashindwa hii ni homa ama ni nini? Unasikia,
babes, haki si mnatusumbua. Hati yo sijui calm down is my birthday. Sijui all people were born the same but legends were born in December. Mbona mnajisikianga hivyo ama mnaonanga mkikaa kale kamkate ka mwisho?
Nani?
Shetani matana
Shetani mugani? Shetani mugani? Tebu tuone shetani mugani?
Johnny.
Oh, kametokwa ho.
NTV, turning on your world. The following program has been rated PG. It may contain scenes unsuitable for children under the age of 10.
I'ma keep it short and sweet. DJ play the song on repeat. Odi dance to the beat.
Right about now, you are rocking with the best. I cannot deny you know. I cannot deny you. Nah, you know. OG, hey, say leave me alone. Kahuna mpango on my phone. Sinipigie simu, don't be calling on my phone. Leave me alone. If you can keep up with the Jones, I'd rather die in Bali, don't be coming to my zone. Leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. What you I mean? Leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. What you I mean? Leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. What you I mean? Leave me alone, what you I mean? Leave me alone, what you I mean? Munabambika na vako, zile nyuso mampasho. Ile idhani ko haso, mimi kipanguza jasho. Muna eneza udaku, ndiyo mwongezo za macho. Lakini nakula kichapo, kofi soki na kahasho. Tangu niende komasho, nimekuwa controversial. Ngori zile niko nazo, zimenilete vikwazo. Maheto na kaso, baoje na kazanga maso. So usidedi na mawazo, tu kama si yako ni yako. Na you cannot be masako, omolo odinga obako. Presenter na dinga na paso, tadane menunu warafo. Mashonu piga kila sato, design ya tresi na mato. Sindo huku jerurasho, kuwotea soda na chapo. Nina mbogi ya ushago, na manyako wananitago. Nina jeshi ya kina zero, na zimewashikia dago. Mishinanga na kina wambo, kwa ile kibanda ya pango. Tuko juu ya rege kanambo, na tuko rada ya makanjo. Send me alone, kahuna mpango on my phone. Sinipigie simu, don't be calling on my phone. Leave me alone. If you can keep up with the Jones, I'd rather die in Bali, don't be coming to my zone. Leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. What you I mean? Leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. What you I mean? Leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. What you I mean? Leave me alone, what you I mean? Leave me alone, what you I mean? Hey. Nataka kunipimia life asifu waga ni fair. Baka watoto wa juzi saijo wananidea. Imaisha ni kushi vile unataka ama ni jea. Sustaki nizame na stories za pressure kana taliteo. Mtami huanga ni mea. Kwa telling me wanna air. I know you could think it unfair, but my nigga we never care. Siri ni kunyenyekea, ndojue ni wapi unaelekea. So kuanzia leo tu mimi na declare that lazima ngoma zitaenea. Munapenda kunibadha, kunichafulia rada. Huku mimi najikaza, sauti yangu mimi napaza. Mimi nikipea unajua na mada. Bongo kapuka genge ama raga. Tangu wajue squeeze mimi ni baba, shode wangu wako chini ya waba. Ni mimi ndo wanapenda kutupia lawama. Jusaina natengeza pesa na hao hawana. Hakuna kitu ya bure buda ni kukazana. Leo jo watakucheka na kesho ni kama. Kaha una mpango wa mafao, usinipigie simu.